My mind spiraled back to a bird's eye view of my childhood home, this time settling on the house itself. It seemed alive, untamed, breathing with a rhythm all its own. I imagine how it felt the moment you stepped inside. It had a way of welcoming you, wrapped you in its energy like an embrace, offering a place to rest, to heal, to belong. You didn't need an invitation, you just had to show up. And once you did, you were family. The heart of the house was the kitchen. The mosaic countertops and the copper backsplash gleamed in the soft light, reflecting the warmth that radiated from the potbelly wood stove next to the exposed brick fireplace. The terracotta tiles beneath our feet had seen it all. The scraped knees, the spilled drinks, the late night dances when the world outside had fallen asleep. My dad would gather kindling from a pile of dry wood outside, the scent of it mixing with the crisp winter air. Then he'd stoke the fire until it was cranking, and the crackling sounds of the fire blending with life around it still echo throughout my mind. Sometimes, when the fire burned steady, my mom would toss in potpourri. Dried flowers, cinnamon sticks, cloves, and orange peels, filling the house with familiar, comforting scents. Dinner wasn't just a meal in our house. It was ritual, a time for connection. The custom pub table at the center of the kitchen wasn't just a place to eat. It is where stories were shared, laughter spilled over, and arguments turned into resolutions. No matter the chaos, no matter how many people were around the table, there was always room for one more. Whether you were family, friends, or even strangers, if you needed a place, you had it. The word ritual made my mind spin towards religion, and for some reason it made me think about diversity, complexity, and embracing beliefs that may not align with my own. I first learned about Mormon missionaries one spring afternoon when two strangers knocked on our door. Like me, they were teenagers, but they were dressed like they were headed to a school dance. Button-up shirts, ties, dress shoes. It was definitely not what I expected, and I thought they were the weirdest teenagers I'd ever seen. They asked to speak with my mom, and when she came to the door, they introduced themselves as missionaries and offered help with any chores we had. The moment my mom heard help and free, her eyes lit up and she smiled and said, "If it's free, it's for me." Then she took them straight to the backyard and started pointing out all the things that needed doing. Pulling weeds, moving stuff, fixing up little things here and there. They stayed for hours. When they finally tried to leave, my mom insisted that they stay for dinner. Once she learned they were far from their homes, out here proving their faith to their church, she couldn't help but look out for them. They showed up almost every day that summer, probably thinking they'd help with a few chores and score a good meal. They were right. My mom took them in like they were her own. After that first pair, it seemed word got out that a sweet lady would let you earn your missionary hours and would even feed you because like clockwork, those missionaries kept showing up. I never bothered getting to know them since they were always new faces, there for a day, sometimes for weeks or a month, up to a year at most, and occasionally for the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, and even the summer clam boils. We were not Mormon, and they never tried to convert us. Truthfully, religion was never discussed. Each time a new face appeared at our door, unsure of what to expect, my mom would welcome them in, offering a meal, a seat at our table, and a place in the rhythm of our home. Over the years, it became a tradition, these strangers becoming temporary fixtures in our family, their presence quietly leaving a mark on our lives. I thought to myself, what other marks were left on me because of this environment? And well, let me tell you this, our home was not just built on faith and love. It was built on recovery, second chances, transparency, and growth. My dad's battle with addiction shaped everything about our house. Cocaine was his drug of choice, and for years it controlled his life. I changed everything. When I came into the picture, my dad had to choose addiction or sobriety. He chose sobriety with me in mind, but relapsed when I was 5 and realized he had to choose it for himself. His reason to be clean needed to be a selfish one. I never saw him in his active addiction, and if I did, I wasn't sure, but I felt the impact of that journey. My mom, the unwavering force beside him, was the one who pushed him the hardest for his recovery, showing up at Al-Anon meetings every Monday for over 25 years. She believed in change, in the possibility of transformation, even when it seemed impossible. They had no room for anything but all or nothing, a home of extremes, especially when it came to my dad's fragile state after his past struggles with addiction. A constant pressure for everyone to conform. Together, they created a space of accountability, not just for our family, but for anyone who entered. I grew up believing my parents had the kind of love that could withstand lifetimes. To me, they weren't just in love. They were a force of nature. Their souls collided and reconnected like magnets drawn together by an invisible pull neither could resist. I watched them battle with fiery passion, only to see them melt back into each other, as if their hearts spoke a language only they understood. My dad's affections could make my mom blush in the most unexpected moments. And their laughter had a way of filling every space they entered. Their love wasn't just theirs. It radiated outward, touching everyone around them, turning our home into a beacon of warmth and chaos and joy. My dad would sometimes say, once an addict, always an addict. At first it sounded strange coming from someone who had been clean for years. But over time I realized it wasn't a defeatist view. It was recognition that addiction was a part of who he is, something he could not just erase. But instead of allowing it to control him, he learned to channel that energy into healthier habits, like switching coffee for cocaine, work for connection, while remaining disciplined enough to resist the temptation of his escapist nature. Every time he says it, I believe he is capable of breaking deeper patterns of habit and behavior, because growing in this environment made it clear to me that personal suffering could be addiction's twin. Both have a way of hollowing you out until survival starts to feel like faith, and somehow they teach you to die and keep walking at the same time. But he never spoke about what waits on the other side of that kind of healing. When you stop centering your identity around the wound and step into something new, there's a term for that. Post-traumatic growth, the stage where your story shifts from survival to expansion. And I wondered if it was ever possible to reach that stage if you're always identifying with your recovery. All these years later, I'm still unsure whether that stage is attainable for everyone, or only for those who actively choose it. I came to understand that our pain shapes us. It can cloud the good moments, making happiness feel like a pursuit instead of a creation. All of this contributed to an environment where peace and chaos coexisted like old friends in an endless dance. The clutter was never ending. My dad has a habit of piling things. Old papers, closed, half-finished projects into stacks that seem to multiply by the day. Meanwhile, my mom would clean, sweep, and tidy up, trying to stay ahead of the mess. But even in the chaos, there was life. There was this strange sort of order in the disorder. A sense that no matter how messy it got, the house remained a place where we could all be ourselves, flaws and all. Both the physical and energetic clutter was a reminder of the work in progress, the imperfections that made us who we were. The openness of our flaws and the openness of our love meant we absorbed everything, energetically and otherwise. Our home was always open, literally and figuratively. We didn't even have a proper lock. The old latch was lost to time or buried in one of my dad's half-finished repair projects, replaced with a rolled up sock to keep out the draft. Security came down to our Rottweiler, who was more stuffed animal than guard dog. But with open doors came open risks, and things went missing. First, pocket change, a book, a jacket, then heirlooms. Pieces of history were gone without a trace. Despite the theft, my mom's faith never wavered. She believed in people's ability to change, not from naivety, but from a conviction that faith was stronger than fear. There were many times when people around us hit rock bottom, and not just emotionally. My dad often brought home drunks and addicts desperate to get clean. Ever the protector. He'd get them showered, sober them up, and take them to the next available meeting, walking them toward recovery. Some stayed a night, others for weeks, inching their way from rock bottom to the next step. My mom sheltered her Al-Anon friends escaping abuse. There was always someone new in the house, and our role in their lives was simple: to be their safe harbor in the middle of their storm, because we always had a couch to crash on, no questions asked. Most days, my dad's friend Trouble was drunk by 7 a.m., stumbling up our driveway. He was one of those souls who didn't want saving. He didn't want help, but my dad kept supporting him. He was always there, always drunk. Trouble might have reminded my dad to stay sober. I never quite understood their relationship. To me, they had very little in common, but maybe he was just seeing pieces of himself within Trouble. Another common drunk who showed up often was my uncle. I remember one summer afternoon, when he was drunk, he was lost in his addiction, stumbling into our front yard after partying. He laid down on the grass and kept saying he was swimming, doing a backstroke on the front lawn. He thought the sky was green and the grass was a pool, stumbling through a world only he could see. It was surreal, but in our home, that kind of thing happened all the time. It wasn't just hospitality and support. It was refuge for these lost souls. I was 5 when Billy came into our lives, a teenager with tired eyes and a gentle way about him. He was the first stranger to feel like a brother, the first to make me feel like a little sister. And he was only the beginning. Over the years, my mother opened our doors to a revolving cast of exchange students from all over the world, each searching for something. Maybe adventure, opportunity, freedom, or escape. Some shared their cultures with us, leaving an undeniable mark on our hearts. She also welcomed our friends, the ones who had it worse than we did, carrying wounds far too heavy for their age. She saw their pain, and without hesitation, she made them family, not just in words, but in every way that mattered. Her ability to bond with others was rooted in something deeper, rooted in love, presence, and unconditional acceptance. It was as if she built a bubble around them, a shield to soften the blows they'd already endured. She wanted them to know that they were seen, that they were worthy of love, that no matter where they came from or what they had faced, they belonged. She wove a safety net with her own hands, so even if they were falling, they would never fall alone. My mom always said, children are products of their environment. And she lived by that truth, creating a home full of love, despite the invisible weights we all carry. I often wondered, if this was my environment, then what did that make me? She opened our doors to anyone in need, even when it caused financial strain and tension. My dad resented the cost, but for her, it wasn't a choice. It was who she was, nurturing, healing, and no matter the sacrifice, she was gonna do it. Money was the air we couldn't breathe. My childhood was marked by bills, loud arguments, and constant tension of never having enough. Winter was the hardest. Work disappeared and peace went with it. And I learned early that life had to be more than just surviving. An example of this life pattern became abundantly clear to me a few weeks before I turned 14. In the middle of a typical snowy New England winter, my parents actually said I could have a party. It felt monumental because my birthdays usually vanished under snowstorms or tight budgets. I got permission to host it at an underage dance club and spent weeks inviting my friends, imagining a birthday that felt like a real celebration. But 4 days before the party, when the deposit for the VIP section was due, everything unraveled. My mom panicked because the money she was counting on from a house closing was delayed. My dad was frustrated because he depended on her income during his slow seasons. The argument exploded, and once again, we were broke. I was convinced it was over. I would be partyless again, staring at another birthday that felt like another random Tuesday. Looking back, it was my 14th birthday, and my panic carried this strange, almost mystical echo, like a hidden pattern unfolding. I didn't know what a karmic lesson was then, but the theme was clear. In numerology, the number 14 speaks of freedom, curiosity, and adaptability. It's a number of growth through effort, a quiet reminder to find balance, stay grounded, and to move with change. 14 asks for patience when the world withholds what you've worked for. A balance between effort and reward, which teaches you how to accept adaptability. Just then, my dad did what he always does, and he fixed it, which is how I said fixed when I was little. He put on his imaginary superhero cape and found a way. He picked up a side job refinishing hardwood floors, a skill he had quietly mastered over the years. His work ethic is literally his superpower. The ability to turn nothing into something when it absolutely matters. That night became more than a party. It captured everything about my world, proof that scarcity and fear was always in the backdrop. But somehow, it always worked out. When the club closed and the party moved to my bedroom, it was actually the attic. It had a window seat, an exposed chimney, dubbed the coolest room ever by my friends. I saw it as a private tower, like Rapunzel's perched high and secluded. From there, I could see everything. The clouds, the horizon, the bridge that seemed to reach the sky. I felt connected to the view shifting easily with the world below. That night, though, was filled with the same sense of freedom and belonging. We laughed, shared secrets, and watched the world below, knowing I had the flexibility to handle whatever is coming. My mind spun with the idea of new beginnings, transformation, and the hidden meaning in numbers, which made me think about the next wild thing that shaped my childhood home. It wasn't some catastrophic event, but divorce and foreclosure, and eventually the house was torn down and replaced by condos. Somehow that felt like a perfect ending for a place that held for a place that held so much energy, maybe even too much. But the energy of the street number 819 still lingers in my memory. Our house had always been full of love and chaos, laughter echoing down hallways, and tension humming beneath it all. And in numerology, 819 reduces to the number 9, the number of completion, growth, and transformation. It makes sense now, how that house always seemed alive, pulsing with something spiritual. It was a place where we learned to grow, to fall apart, and to rebuild. The walls may be gone, but what they taught us stayed. My mom's balance of open care, wisdom, loud love, and turmoil became the message I carried forward, shaping me into someone who can hold both chaos and love in the same hand.